Yo, how we doing, guys? Hey, welcome. Welcome to the Modern Monarchist Show, featuring my bedhead, more like cowboy hat head. This has been a mess, and I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not even going to try to, maybe I will worry about it. It is just a complete shamble up here on top of my head. That's what happens, man. Wearing hats is cool. Wearing my cowboy Australian hat is sweet. It looks awesome. But it leaves me with this mess here. So, yeah, I'm going to look like an utter scrub. But what's going on? What's up with you guys? We are going to continue with our history narrative, but not as much today because we have a lot. Someone says unkept monarchist. Yeah, that's more like it. Forget modern monarchist. It's unkept. But what's going on with you? I'm not reading Bible stories. We're on a narrative of the First Crusade, which reads like a great book or a TV show with how many good characters there are and epic stories to discuss. It's really interesting. We just talked about how Antioch was finally secured. The Crusaders crushed the Muslim army, but disease is spreading rapidly. Because when you're in a city under siege, back then they didn't know what germs were. Bodies would just die and rot where they were. And oftentimes they would fall into cisterns and wells and into aqueducts. It's an ancient city. And the bodies wouldn't be recovered until they had contaminated the whole thing. Dysentery, which is, along with like typhoid, one of the great killers of armies in any era, is caused by bad drinking water. And this would devastate the whole crusade. Where do I read about the Crusades? There's several books. There's Harold Lamb, of course. Ben Fugman says, your history stories are like the dude in Dungeons and Dragons giving the players the scenarios. Yeah, the scenarios for life. But no, let's continue with the narrative here. Disease is spreading rapidly throughout the entire camp. It's an epidemic, and it's just getting worse even after the great destruction of the Muslim army of Kerboga. The first to die of the important lords is Bishop Athamir. I know, he dies kind of anticlimactically because he is one of our best boys on the crusade. He's a very holy man, and he was the great unifier of the crusade. We see that he's not just a cleric who loves to chant and say the Angelus and lead hymns, but he likes to lead from the front. He's been in the thick of almost every single battle. He's been close to death, and now it is disease that has brought him low. When he went out to fight in the big battle, he was very sickly already, but he stood through it. But as he started to drift closer and closer to death, he doesn't have a bad attitude. He's happy, he's jovial, he's joking, and he dies. And with him dies the unity of the crusade, because he was a unifier. Along with Stephen of Blois, that absolute coward who betrayed them with his false words to the Byzantine emperor, causing the emperor to leave and break his oath, Stephen and the bishop were the unifiers, and they're both gone. And immediately the Crusaders start arguing. They're arguing even though they're dying, because they find themselves in control of a huge swathe of territory, as far as Tarsus in the north, and Edessa in the north and the east, and Antioch now. They think the south is completely laid open after the destruction of the great armies, and they're bickering. And the sides that are bickering the most are the Provençals of southern France, under the hawkish and sickly Raymond of Toulouse, and the brash and brawny Bohemond and his southern Normans. They both lay claim over certain parts of the city for various reasons. Bohemond says it should be ours, we took it, the emperor betrayed our oath, and didn't help us, therefore it is ours, and it should be mine, because, remember, we swore that whoever would reach the walls first would own the city. Raymond disagrees and says, we all swore an oath to return the land that used to be in the Byzantine emperor control to the Byzantine emperor, and why aren't we doing this? So it's back and forth, they're bickering. Meanwhile, the disease spreads, and a wholly new regiment which had arrived on the coast on Genoese ships of armored Germans arrives into Antioch, and the whole regiment is wiped out by disease. A couple thousand men. It's sickening. And they had no way of testing which water was good and all. And no one knows what to do. Some of the lords start leaving. They start going back to the castles they had occupied before the siege. Hugh of Vermandois, or Hugh the Indecisive, you could call him, heads back to Constantinople to tell the emperor what happened. But the emperor had already written some Italian monasteries and the Pope saying that the crusade had died. And now he hears from Hugh that it's alive and captured Antioch. He must be very angry, the emperor. I would be, frankly, because he just botched up his oath. Hugh doesn't want to return to the crusade, though. He wants to go back. He's missing France. He wants to stay in Constantinople. And eventually he just goes back to Paris. So there's another lord down. And in the Council of the Lords that are occurring, there's a lot of old faces missing through disease and people leaving, but there's a lot of new faces getting involved as well. Such as peasants, men-at-arms who were knighted on the field of battle due to great acts of bravery. And in the camp, like I'm saying, the Provincials and the Normans who are fighting over the city, there appears a new camp. They're called the Jerusalemites. And the Jerusalemites are just the common people and some lower lords that just want to go to Jerusalem. They just want to go to Jerusalem and help out with the people. Someone says, the water that I'm drinking, that better not be tap water. It's not tap water. This is good old purified well water, my man. Anyways, they want to just go on to Jerusalem. They're sick of bickering. They've been in Antioch so long. That's the whole goal, is it not? To capture the holy city? And they're at a standstill, but eventually these lower people break the whole stalemate and say, hey, why don't the Normans get to keep the keep of the city, and the Provincials can keep the palace and the gate? They decide that's good. They pack up their armies. They start heading home, and, home meaning Jerusalem, and some their eternal home. And they all start making their way south. It appears like they finally got their unity together for now, but in reality it's not. Raymond and Bohemond are enemies now. They're rival barons, and they almost came to blows. They almost killed each other during many of their quarrels. The Crusaders had asked Pope Urban himself to come on the crusade, but he was too busy calling for reinforcements, and he was too busy assuring his authority over temporal and spiritual realms of Europe, because he's in conflict with the German Emperor right now. So he doesn't come. He sends a bishop instead, another bishop, an Italian. So they continue down, and that's where we'll pick up tomorrow. I thought we would have a little break after the amazing battle that I described, with my exquisite describing skills. I know how to talk about battles. I know how to make it as concise, not confusing as possible. And believe me, with all the varying texts and differing opinions, you kind of have to sort through many. And you can't just look at Wikipedia and go, dur. That's the right answer. So we'll pick up what happens afterwards, because we put Antioch behind us, and now we're going further south into the heart of darkness towards the Holy Land. So that's that. Done with the history. I want to talk about some things maybe that you don't care about. But I want to talk about the Ukraine-Russian thing. What should be our stance on it? What should we even tell people? I just say, hey, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Why are we going to fight for another war? I even saw some boomers counter-signaling the whole narration of this. They should say, yeah, we should rally behind the American flag. Well, what exactly is the American flag doing in that part of the world? Why are we involved in NATO so much still? And why are we facing our guns towards Russia? Why are we? We should be facing them south towards the Mediterranean to block the migrant ships that are coming up from all around the Mediterranean and the Greek islands from Turkey. That's where the real problem is. But no, apparently we have to fight the straw man of Russia. The Soviet Union specter is still haunting the minds of the boomers, and has passed on to the minds of many boomer-like young people in TPUSA and other places. They don't want to deal with the reality that Russia isn't forever going to be our life enemy. We're going to get involved in a war if this follows out. We're going to be carpet bombing Europe with gay bombs. We got so many bigger troubles here at home. We got problems with vaccines. We got problems here with immigration and anti-white schooling and education. We have a literal breakdown of our society across North America and Europe due to these draconian vaccine laws and the deaths they are causing, frankly. That why are we expending any energy on Ukraine and Russia? Let the Slavs fight, okay? Let all the Slavs fight. It doesn't matter. Let them duke it out. Ukraine is on a civilizational fault line, okay? It always has been. It's never had truly its own identity in many of its places that it currently holds geographically. There's some places that are very pro-Russian. But that shouldn't be our problem. Why are we still the policemen of the world? This is just an America first point right here, where we have to make a stand and say, why are we the policemen of the world? We shouldn't have to be. If we're going to be, let's realize who the real enemies are. Let's try to keep our enemies from falling apart in Western Europe from heavy migration. We should be turning back boats, blowing boats out of the water that refuse to turn around, instead of attacking and risking more lives. You know, there's that meme of this monkey. He's listening to a Latina woman shouting in loud Spanish, and it's saying, a Ukrainian general listening to commands from a Latina woman from a Texas army base. Like, that's how it's going to be. And the monkey looks confused. You know, it's just, that's what it's going to be like. You know, are we going to be bombing innocent people like Bill Clinton did in the 90s? I think we will be. The Balkans was something we never should have gotten involved in as well. Just because there's a war crime happening, just because there is something bad happening, doesn't mean we should always stop it, okay? Because if we try to get involved, we'll just make it worse. And then we bring problems here to the entire country. Like, where's the Russian community in America? I know there isn't a Russian community as big as the Mexican, or like the Cuban, or the Puerto Rican, but where's the Russians? Are they protesting this in America? I need to look that up. They should be, because there is some severe, just blind anti-Russian hatred. And I get it, they got their problems from a right-wing perspective, they do, but they're not like the Grinch, okay? They don't want to steal your Christmas. In fact, you know, we're the ones, with our hegemony around the world, that want to make you not worship Christ in Christmas anymore. And we're the ones that want to stop you from doing that. So, enough of this Russian hatred. Enough of this. Don't even, like, say that you even hate Ukraine. Just forget about it. You know, it's slightly similar to the Israel-Palestine thing. You don't have to be a Palestine simp because you hate Israel. Just say, I don't like Israel, and we have no reason to support Palestine either. Let them duke it out. You know what I mean? Let them duke it out. It's not our problem. Hey, people just want to get involved where their nose doesn't belong. When your nose doesn't belong in some place, it's going to get hit. Your proboscis is going to get punched. And it's not going to be a good time when you're suffering because you were a nosy little neighbor and you should have kept your feet inside your own household in your own property. You know? When you take a big stinking crap on your neighbor's lawn, don't be surprised when he does the same to yours. So, yeah, that's basically that on Ukraine. I attended a couple, well, just one anti-war protest, which was basically saying, screw the EU, no more globalist wars. Those were some of the signs we were carrying. I wanted to call some of my Russian friends nearby, but that would have looked like we were working with Putin, so decided not to. But that's basically it. And everyone likes to talk like Ron Paul. Everyone likes to talk like Pat Buchanan. Everyone likes to talk like Nick Fuentes. But no one actually wants to do Ron Paul, Pat Buchanan, and Nick Fuentes' style of action when it comes down to it. Everyone's scared to when they need to. And we really need to. We really need to. Or else what's going to be what's going to be the protest that we join, you know? It's not just vaccines that we need to be against. We need to be against expending more lives and more money in another psyop of a war. Because frankly, I don't care about the EU. The EU sucks. I wish it would fall apart. And I hope it does as quickly as it can. You know, Zemmour, this Eric Zemmour guy in France, he could be bad. He could be a fake right-winger. I think he is. But as long as he helps tear down the EU, so be it. I mean, I hope he does, if he gets elected. I hope everyone continues to crap on the EU, because the EU is bad. The EU is bad, and if the EU falls, if we let Germany become the only state in the EU, that's good. Because they're a source of moral evil. And they have no right to tell the Eastern Europeans how to act. They're always making fun of Eastern Europeans and the Slavs in general. They want to bring punishment to Russia eternally for nefarious reasons. So let them duke it out. Let America just completely ride the storm. Ride the tiger. Don't worry, guys. Don't let your sons and your cousins or anyone get drafted or volunteer for this, okay? This is not worth it. Now, there's a good chance, and I think there's a really good chance, that there won't be a war in which America enters in a military capacity. We could pull the Germany option, like how Germany sends 5,000 helmets to Ukraine. Like, that doesn't matter. That's a show of moral support, or how I like to call it, immoral support. But that's just like a vague and banal platitude saying, hey, 5,000 helmets. Like, if that happens, okay, who cares, right? I'm sure Russia's not going to go to war with us over 5,000 helmets. But we shouldn't bomb cities, we shouldn't do anything. Don't even send peacekeepers. Forget that. But Biden and Obama and the previous past presidents have had a really big hard-on for Russia. They want to attack Russia. They want to break it. So, I'm Polish, and I have a problem with Russia in the past, but I'm not such a blind, low IQ retard that I don't see that you shouldn't just attack people you have grudges with, or people that you've had bad problems with in the past. This is not worth it. You need to create bridges, not burn them. We're creating bridges with the wrong people. We've been in bed with Israel for far too long. The West Coast is getting bought up by Chinese billionaires. So, we're letting in a bunch of Latinos and all these type of people into America. Why? Because we like their food and their music. Well, John Miller at AFPAC was very correct when he said Latino music sucks. Okay, it does suck. Their food is good, I'll grant them that, but there's no reason to suicide your nation over food. I like burritos, but I care about my people more than I care about burritos. I need to get a haircut, by the way. This is an absolute mess. Mr. Bombastic. Yeah, I like your name. Big Gucci Bombastic. I like that. He says Russia is Germany 2.0 as far as keeping the world's agenda out of their country. Yeah, they still have a ton of abortion. They have, they got, bad birth rates. They got their own demographic problems. But yeah, generally speaking, they're an improvement over the Brussels and German and Dutch area. Like, the Low Countries, Scandinavia and Germany, are some of the most immoral places in the whole world. I really mean it. Like, they are devoid of Christianity in many of those places. And you can tell. You really can tell. It's quite surprising when you see the rates of, where Christianity is still the strongest, and then you compare that with the politics, it adds up perfectly. It adds up perfectly. So Western civilization is falling apart because no one is wanting to take up the mantle of it. They're very happy to burn it, light it on fire, and forget about it. So right now, the civilization of the West is in freefall of Christianity. No one wants to pick it up. Some people offer themselves up as proxies, like, what's his name? The Fidesz party guy, Orban in Hungary. And the Polish do, but there's going to be civil war in those countries as well, because there are some deep-seated, deep-rooted powers in those countries that we forget about, because we like to get involved in the memes of how some of these Central Slavic countries, Central European countries are based, but they do got a lot of problems. There's a big brain drain in Poland, because when the Russians took it over, they killed everyone that had any sort of social and noble blood in them, meaning like anyone that knew how to run countries and knew how to run government offices were killed. Every soldier, every ethnic Polish guy they could find The Ukrainians killed a lot of Poles in southern Poland, and so I don't want to help them. All I'm saying is that Poland doesn't have an ethnic, noble, and government-minded upper class. What's in Poland ruling right now is leftovers of the Soviet Union, leftovers of pre-Polish independence Poland. It's so sad. The smartest people in Poland were genocided. And those now that are looking for better jobs are going to England. So there is a big brain drain in Central Europe that needs to be stopped. And it's kind of sad because Poland, I think, wants to leave the EU. They've been thinking about it for a long time. Problem is, EU gives them a lot of money. They're on the EU's chain right now. So, there's been talks of having a Slavic counter version of the EU, which I think would be good. But how are you going to have a Slavic version of the EU when the southern Slavs hate each other and the Ukrainians and Russians are going to kill each other? If anything, you need to create a counter version where it's like Poland, Austria, and Hungary. But then again, Austria is doing bad things now. They're basically going to start imprisoning and killing people soon enough over the vaccine. So who are your allies? As Elrond says in Lord of the Rings, our list of allies grows thin. And that's very true. We have to start looking inwards. Our true allies are our neighbors, the people that would stand shoulder to shoulder in a trench at a protest. Those are your true allies. Our allies are no longer across any sea, guys. Let's just face it. Everyone's going to soon enough be in it for themselves. And it's not selfish to want to take care of your own. We need to start taking care of our own. So I wouldn't go to war for anyone. Like, if Poland was under attack, I would be very much supported. I would support the Polish, but I wouldn't put military and boots on the ground. It's not worth it. It's quite stupid to do that. But, I'm not a policymaker yet, and I never may be. All I'm saying is, guys, to spread the news on what's true and good out there. And what's true and good out there is peace. Peace in Europe is what we should want. Because if we don't have peace between ourselves, if we're fighting ourselves, our enemies will rub their hands together in glee and celebrate while they take us from behind. And they're doing that in some countries already. Where are we going to flee to? Iceland? Greenland? The mountains? Well, you can't flee to the mountains anymore because there used to be an old saying that, Africans and these tropical minorities, they don't like cold places. They'll never go up north. Well, how untrue is this? This is very untrue. It's like a boomer straw man argument. They've taken over northern Minnesota, certain cities, the Somalis have. They're in Michigan. They're in Vancouver. They're in Canada. They're not afraid of the cold. They're in Sweden. They'll do just fine in the cold, trust me. Alright? So, there's really no place to flee, geographically speaking. I mean, they're always going to be down for anything. Do you think that rough people, whose culture is rape and pillage, are going to have problems with a little cold like we do? Of course not. They're going to get along just as fine. And they're going to take advantage of us. So what you really need are just strong city councils. You need to have city councils that are against this madness and that are against immigration on large. Libertarians are not going to stop the mass migration of refugees into your small towns. Your small towns are going to just get completely destroyed. And they've been already taking hits throughout the decades due to heroin and opioid crises, through the drain of business leaving, by the internet. Yes, the internet has its perks, like me talking to you right now, but it's also destroyed identities across the rural parts of the nation. There used to be parts of the East Coast that had their own accents, and the accents sounded like they were from Western England. Now those are disappearing. Accents, by and large, that used to represent certain people are disappearing. There used to be a notion that everyone believed across the country in the early and mid-1900s that people from Maine were very friendly and they'd nod their heads. Sometimes they wouldn't say hi, but they'd always nod their heads when they passed you. That's like a Maine thing. You don't hear about that anymore, and I only discovered that because a great Civil War soldier, Joshua Chamberlain, who led the 20th Maine. If you just know pop culture, you know the history of Gettysburg. He had a bunch of Maine men, and they were very congenial and lumberjacks, and they'd always nod their head when they saw people. This regional culture will disappear. And the internet did a lot to do that. Pornography. Everyone wanted to go to the cities. Very sad. People would go to the cities. Like there's always, in the 80s and 90s, there were a lot of themes like this in movies. And in song. I can think of like, you know, the movie, what's that degenerate movie? I've never seen it, but it's called Grease. That's where like a country Australian woman gets corrupted by a city guy. There's a whole lot of themes like this, where the small town is just, it's boring, you need to go to the city. They go to the city and they start wearing leather, they get piercings and tattoos, and they start sleeping around. And then the movie ends, like, whoa, what a celebration, you know? I'm happy that a small town, boring white life is disappearing, because let's be jiving in the cities, you know? That's what the whole message is. Let's just have free love and enjoy our youth. Meanwhile, they're feeling so guilty about what they've done. The only way to get rid of that guilt is to return to the scene of their crimes and sins, but reverse it on the people that are telling them to stop sinning. You know? You gotta be social crusaders for sin if you're a big sinner, publicly. Because you gotta say, oh, you're making me feel bad. The only shame I'm feeling is because of tradition. And because of the Christians, the Bible Belters, the Catholics. They're the only people that are making me feel this way. When that couldn't be farther from the truth. God gave you a conscience for a reason. So when you prick it so many times, it starts bleeding. And then some people, the worst of the worst, they prick their conscience so many times that they just don't feel it anymore. And those are the people that are growing in number. You know, we have names for them, coon brains. Those are people through lives of licentiousness and sin, and a lot of sin. I'm not just talking about a little, a lot. They become total drones around their pleasure. They become servants and slaves of their pleasure. I believe that was St. Augustine. I'm going to be paraphrasing a bit. He said, you know, a slave, if he be good, is a free man. But a king, if he even has the whole world and is a slave to his passions, is in chains. Now, how true is that, you know? How true is that? You get so many people that say, I can't control what my body does. It feels good, tastes good, it must be right. I don't want to stop doing this because it just feels too good. It makes me happy. And they'll always use that as an argument. Like, haven't you ever done this before? Then how... If you haven't done this before, if you haven't had sex, how could you not know what it's like, you know? You would find out if you experienced it. Well, I don't need to experience cancer to know that it's bad. I don't need to experience leprosy. I don't need to take heroin to know that it's bad. We have had generations and generations, thousands of years of studying to know that impurity is bad. It affects everybody negatively. People say, well, it's, you know, it's better, like Milton says in Paradise Lost, you know, well, it's better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. And that's ultimately where everyone kind of lies on the spectrum of the Coombrings. They all believe that it's better just to reign in this terrible world with its terrible laws and its inane and chaotic allowances of evil than to live in a stoic and staid and more prudish society that I believe we should be living in. You know, I believe like the Pilgrims were a negative force and a negative image for Christianity because they took things too far while also being stingy, greedy people who oftentimes wished ill on their fellow Christians. Not even like fighting them, but like doing dark things. You should read the history of the early Plymouth colony and the King James War in the late 1600s, early 1700s. And there's a reason why a lot of pilgrims in that ancient community would become irreligionists, or they would deconstruct religion to another level. So it was very bad. The kids were oftentimes abused. But you need to return to a more prudish society. I'm not afraid to be against all this. I know it's like the lingua franca, the common tongue, to swear a lot now, but I'm always advocating for people to stop swearing. Because not only does it seem like you're not educated and you can't find the proper words to express your feelings, but it also just is crude. And in general, even though I've become quite acquainted with this, I want to stop doing it. And I know it's bad. When you're angry, you could always say something else. I might sound like a pearl clutcher. I watch people that swear, okay? I watch Nick. I watch all these people. And I know that I didn't go to public school. I went to private school. I was homeschooled, so I didn't have the conditioning that a lot of people have. But I still work in public places. I rub shoulders, and I'm friends with a lot of people, obviously, that are in this movement. But, this is my advice and my opinion, as a fellow brother in Christ, is just to work on it. Because I do believe that we should try to polish ourselves as much as possible. The world will scuff us up as much as it can. And we should try to put on a little spit and polish, because you will be respected for that. And you show up against your enemies. You prove them that you're actually better. Like, you can get in the mud if you have to. But for the rest of the time, we are enjoying the grapes and the wine and the marble and the churches. It's not just... We're not just trying to be cool because we like being rough. We're trying to be cool because it's right. So you got to make sure that your heart's in the right place when it comes to being involved in our movement. And whatever brings you into the movement, fine, but your heart has to be in the right place. Or else, you might tear away from the movement. We have so many people that get involved in America First and right-wing politics because they think of, what can it benefit me? What can it benefit me? Like my own personal standing, my gain. Can I get richer? Can I get to know politicians who are cool? Can I take pictures with epic people? You got to start asking, how can it advance your soul? How can it advance your people? You got to become selfless. And another thing too is you got to have loyalty. You may not like certain people that are friends with the head guy. You may not like certain people that are friends of Nick and all these people, fellow streamers or streamers that are on platforms, but for loyalty's sake, keep the peace, guys. This isn't really a democracy. We're trying to get away from democracy. We're trying to get away from everyone's opinions on the most small little things. We're trying to get away from that, shaking and destroying the bigger picture here. Everyone has a purpose, Everyone does have a purpose. And whether we like it or not, we're all working towards a similar motive and a similar goal. And that goal is a return not just to 1950s America, because even 1950s America had the termites, which would bring about the 1960s. We're looking to even turn back the clock against certain aspects of the Enlightenment. Okay? We're looking back to just reshape the image of America, because we have some foundational flaws in our country's history. And those foundational flaws aren't what the public schools say, not what the liberals are teaching in Ivy Leagues and all around the college country. But these foundational flaws are being too ambiguous. There are discrepancies in being ambiguous. Not describing what a freedom is, because now everyone says that the freedom to do whatever they want is in the First Amendment. So no, we have to start thinking again about America as a people and as the land itself, rather than just written laws. If it's just written laws, then they're right when they say that written laws of America could go around the world and those places would be American if they followed our laws. That's not true. It's the people here. It's the land. So that's what we got to start thinking. What's best for the people in the land? And what's best for the people in the land is to create a stability of loyalty. Loyalty is very nice. Being loyal, even when you don't like it, is proof that you are growing and that you're maturing. So many people, they don't like something and go off. Like, oh, this guy, he told me to do this, and he told me to just, tuck my chin in and take it. and take the slings and bows of our enemies, and he didn't want me to Fed post. You got some growing up to do, son. You got some growing up to do. Or the world will continue to swallow you like I'm about to swallow this well water. Let's see here. Got any comments? Here, Baked Alaska just got swatted again on stream. Yeah, people do that. Baked he carries a heavy cross, carries a heavy burden, but we love Baked. Baked is one of our greatest comics, one of our greatest free speech advocates for America First, and he has a heart of gold. And I'll always defend Baked and what he does, because he does a lot of good work. But yeah, so yeah, that was my little spiel there, kind of just talking about loyalty. It's very important. You know, treat your family with loyalty and your larger family beyond that, which is your people. I believe that we need to get back to being more chivalrous in public as well. And this kind of goes along with loyalty, because when you live in an area that's close-knit, open doors for people. Be nice, be smiley. Doesn't mean you have to be a creep about it. Just be nice, be respectful. And people will be brought around to that. And if they're not respectful to you, continue to be respectful. That's just it. That's my opinion. I've given a lot of thought to this. I've rebelled quite a bit. I've been angry at people. Heck, I've even treated people I didn't like, who were respectful to me, disrespectfully. We may have agreed on similar things. It's just human emotions get in the way. Certain things about people may rub us the wrong way. We could be jealous of them. We could think they're stupid, they're dopey, but all in all, we have to create an atmosphere where men, especially men, have each other's back. Patriot Front doesn't just have each other's back. They're going a little beyond that, if you know what I mean. They're going a little beyond that, little touchy-feely. If you guys know the meme, then you know what I'm talking about. Patriot Front getting all handsy with each other. But men in general need to be supporting each other. Women always do that. Women support women when in reality they really don't. And they argue with each other and they attack each other. Well, men need to form closer bonds of fraternal fellowship. And, you need to start treating each other like the kings that we can become. Yeah, there's certain room for breaking balls, and that's good. And it's especially good when you are shaming someone on a sin, a public sin that they're flaunting. Shaming used to be a great equalizer in society, because back when societies were Catholic, the peasants could shame a king into doing public penance and changing his life and basically changing the power of the king and the queen, because shame and stigmas were so strong. So that's what you should do as men. But when you're as men too, it's like, I never attack fellow men who share my views, but maybe aren't advocating for them as well. I always defend people on our side, regardless of who's attacking them. A lot of women will attack men, our bravest men in our movement, because they don't like what we say about women or say about feminism. And then other men will stay silent because they don't want to, they don't want to risk their chances of getting with that girl. I'm talking about public situations. I have this problem at our church and our communities. We have a trad Catholic infestation of tryhards who go to Sunday Mass and act all trad Catholic-y like a girl. And then besides that, they act like tramps. And I always, I lost a lot of friends in high school just because I started treating these women, these girls, with the kind of attitude they needed to be treated with. They thought they were literal belles of the ball, okay? They were like, yeah, I'm a trad Catholic girl, and, But then you start finding out who they are. It's like, I don't care. Get back in the kitchen. Make me a sandwich. Please. I'm not going to kiss your hand, okay? I'm not going to call you queen. And the guys that were saying this before me would always get defeated by fellow men who were joining with their girlfriends. because the guys couldn't keep it in their pants, to put it bluntly. But, I would just say to be like, no, Like one of my friends got attacked. He got attacked because someone was calling him racist. And the guy that was calling him racist, he had his girlfriend at the table. And I was like, you're an utter mistake. That's what I told him. Like, you're an utter mistake. You're attacking a man for believing in masculine things, for defending his family. Wouldn't you defend your family? Our family, in a broader extension, is our people, our religion. He's defending that. He's defending the morals around that. So who are you to attack someone that's standing up for us? You're not acting like a king. You're acting like an utter peasant. And that's what you're going to remain. I was saying this. I was being eloquent about it because I believe in eloquent put-downs, because lower tier retards can't put up with it. They can't put up with eloquence. When your insult is so confusing that you make them fumble for words, you humiliate them, it has a double effect. They'll feel angry at first, and then when they actually find out what you said, minutes or hours later, they'll feel angry again. And they won't approach you because you're smart. Vocabulary, learning how to maneuver, learning how to be a strategic conversationalist, a strategic debater is good. Like learning how to adapt on the fly is very important. So confrontation and arguments and putting yourself in uncomfortable situations is good. You must become comfortable in uncomfortable situations. I just do that sometimes. I force myself in situations with people I don't like and at events I don't like and just suffer through them. I suffer and I smile and I put up with it. Never let anyone know that you're flustered. Never. They'll know that they got to you. Just be upbeat. Just be kind. Be a little bit of an ass if you have to be, but don't let them know you're flustered. Because once you let them know you're flustered, you have given in. You have said you are defeated. See, we got some new people here in chat. They came in real quick. I like, God bless, DJT. He's cool. Someone says giggity in chat. Giggity. Yeah, there's a lot of pretenders on the right wing that pretend that they're moral and they're really not. Now, I know everyone has private sins and all of this, and everyone does. Not going to judge that because we hate the sin and love the sinner. But when you're advocating for something so strongly and then you don't push for that in your interior life, there's something to be said about that, Something to be said about that. I don't mean that you should pussyfoot around, because we're all sinners. We should always be acting for reform. But this goes out to right-wing and traditional people. Don't control the narrative because you're a sinner and you don't want to see things change. Because if things change, we might be getting inquisitions around here. And inquisitions were good. The Catholic nations that held on to Inquisition kept the Catholic faith. They did. Italy, Spain, Portugal. France didn't have one. They became a hotbed. There was religious wars throughout the 15 and 1600s. Kings were poisoned. Massacres occurred on both sides. And eventually, the bada bing, bada boom Masons caused the revolution of 1789 and then orchestrated unliving hell upon Europe. Ian MacDonald says, let's circle back soon, McCang. I agree. We'll see you later, buddy. Thanks for joining. But the French Revolution is a pile of worms. Some people view it as a flower spreading, but I view it as a horrible weed spreading its roots in the soil, corrupting the soil. It was terrible. It was an utter mistake. Never should have happened. And is the cause of all our current problems in this modern world. I can't wait to dig deep into the Enlightenment and the French Revolution once I'm out of these crusade stuff. I'm kind of sad I pigeonholed myself for the first few weeks in the First Crusade because I want to bounce around in history. But I learned, it might have been a mistake, but I learned that we're going to bounce around for our first segment of the show in cool aspects of history. But it's important you know about strategy. in warfare and our history, because the Crusades are so much disparaged by even Catholics and Christians, who are just lamos and retards that don't want to own up to the fact that we were defending ourselves and we're objectively good. So yeah, hopefully you're learning some things. Matt says, what about Napoleon? Napoleon is a little bit of a trifle. You can't just say one thing about him, a blanket statement. He is a child of the Enlightenment, but he is not a child of revolution. Meaning he stopped the revolution because he saw how bad it was getting. It was suiciding France. He cut out the most violent aspects, but he continued on with the philosophical rot that was occurring in France, and his soldiers spread it throughout the areas in which France conquered, which was like a virus. And then no wonder there were revolutions in 1848. No wonder. The French Masons were completely freeing up the laws that were made in place to stop malignant groups in Europe from gaining control. And it was bad. But, Napoleon had a good confession and repented his sins in front of a Catholic priest on St. Helena before his death. So, and I hope he made it to heaven, but I believe that he was a force of evil. He did some amazing, great things, because bad people can do great things. Genghis Khan was a great strategist, great tactician. Same was Napoleon. They said Napoleon was worth 20,000 men on the field. And that was Wellesley, I believe, who said that. Wellesley was the British general in Spain during the Peninsular Campaign. So, yeah, that's my take on Napoleon, just very briefly. Interesting guy, though. He was nowhere near as short as they said he was. The propagandists were like, he's 5'1". They made him like a midget. In reality, he was like 5'5", 5'6". He was as short for a leader, and they wanted to really categorize him in the short region. This way they could say he was a manlet. But Napoleon had a fiery temperament, He did have a little man syndrome. He was trying to be better than everyone else because he was little. But there's a lot of good things. There's a lot of interesting things on the Napoleonic Wars. One of the most forgotten periods in history, even though they're recent. And it's not just black and white. Like, I believe that the French were wrong in those wars, but they did a lot of amazing battles that make me interested in following them in history. Like the Battle of Borodino in Russia was the bloodiest battle until 1914. There was like almost 100,000 casualties in a single day. It's insane. There was like 50 French generals and marshals wounded and killed. The Russian chain of command was, in some cases, completely eviscerated by cannonballs. Like, one French general just told his men, "We charge, let us die." And he meant that as, like, to give them courage. Like, the balls on these men had massive huevos. They charged into death. These were times when men were men. Now we can't even go through boot camp. Now we're letting women in through boot camp. And we're letting homosexuals lead our military. When back then, generals would have 4 horses shot out from under them and lead from the front. And officers were the bravest of the brave because they had the brightest uniforms and epaulettes on their shoulders. And they didn't care about dying. They cared about glory and honor. There's a military term called the forlorn hope. And we'll discuss this further. It's very interesting because when there's a breach made in a wall when you're attacking a city, generally the first wave to try to make it into the breach is called the forlorn hope because their hope of surviving is forlorn. It's lost. Generally speaking, all the units of the forlorn hope would be destroyed. But oftentimes, officers would volunteer to lead it with their sword because they wanted to gain the glory. They were so willing to get that next position on the ladder. And I find that awesome as a man. You get a lot of historians now that be like, wow, isn't that weird and strange how these chauvinistic men would act like this to impress each other and impress the entire world? I think it's awesome that you can have perfectly capable gentlemen in the real world. They were gentlemen. I mean, they dressed well, they talked well, they spoke well, and yet they were very willing to walk into the face of death at the same time. This was when men could be polished and yet capable killers as well. And I think, that's what we should all try to become. Don't become like a pirate, okay? Pirates are weirdos. They're rapists, they're killers, they're thieves. They're basically the old-time libertarians. They were by no means as adept as Hollywood makes them to be in shows like Black Sails and Pirates of the Caribbean. They were actually creepy, smelly, and disgusting. So I wouldn't want my kids dressing up as a pirate. I would want my kids dressing up as Spaniards, killing the pirates, killing the Aztecs, taking the New World, spreading the faith. That's what I want. I want them to dress up as Polish winged hussars, killing the infidel. Enough of this worship of the evil and worship of things that have been made kosher. Dressing up as a devil on Halloween and promoting these nasty things. Start dressing up as cowboys again. Yeah, no one dresses up as a cowboy. If they dress up as cowboys, it's sluts and e-girls and whores who dress up as cowboys, but they don't dress like cowboys because they don't dress at all. The cowboy country culture has been bastardized. It's a bunch of white guys wanting to be black, but they're stuck in the country, so they wear the boots and their spurs and their hat, and they sing about girls. Cornfields the club. The country music, cowboy culture has been bastardized. And the real cowboy culture, in its sparks of life that it sometimes has in the modern world, is very much loved. It is loved. These are very humble, good people. Every single legit cowboy I've met has been a guy of a heart of gold. He will stand by the worst situations with a brave attitude, and he won't budge. But he's very kind, he's very generous. They're people that I'd want to associate with. The average bro country person, these fake ones, disgust me. They disgust me because they really they spit in the face of 100 or more years of cowboy culture that's existed. 150 years, 200 years. They're not Christians. They don't respect the land. I believe in respecting the land. Highly important. Don't litter, Don't litter on your land. I hate it. I hate seeing freeways and interstates, the grass on the sides, covered with trash. People just throw garbage bags off the side of the road now. Why don't environmentalists care about that, Environmentalists are willing to cripple economies over these, retard arguments. But they don't care about, putting in their own money into cleaning up areas where every day a lot of animals kill themselves and choke and all that. If they really cared about the environment, they would give a lot of government property to private individuals who treat the land better than the government does. So environmentalists are just, as we know them to be, not only are they losers, hippies, and faggots, but they're also bad faith actors. Even the ones at the lowest tier, because they're too lazy to pick up trash on the side of the road, but they're willing to cripple economies. Because apparently it's cool to make people lose hundreds of thousands of jobs. And it's cool to commit acts of eco-terrorism. So, that's that. That's that. Just rambling today. Just talking about that. Kind of a shorter audience today. I don't blame them. Maybe old Modern Monarchist here being too consistent means that I'm, losing my edge, losing my spark. But I hope I'm not losing my spark. I'll always be around, and we're going to continue to grow. I know we will. Just the second week. And I'm already seeing such a big uptake in YouTube subscribers, people loving the content. And frankly, it's just because it's a labor of love. It's a labor of love, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I will do this for years. I'll make accounts after I'm banned. As long as we can talk about what's on our mind, what's on my mind, frankly, and talking about history, so we can stay in contact with our past. For a people not in contact with their past are a people with no eye on the future. Firmly believe that. I think I just stole that from like 8 different right-wing people. But I didn't, it's not copyrighted, so it's mine. It's mine. But we're getting close to an hour here. Might be ending soon. It's been a pretty good week. Pretty good week. I hope you guys had a good week as well. But yeah, I worked out a new thing in my bio where I have links now. It's like one big link leads you to all my links instead of having these confusing, turn bikes all around everywhere. So, yeah, the show is growing. I got big news too. Really big news. We're going to be going live on YouTube as well as on Instagram starting next week. Because I got a lot more people that would watch me on YouTube as well. So we'll be sharing a couple things. I'll be having my phone here and my camera here, my streaming camera. And we're going to be doing 2 shows at once. Until we get better tech and I can combine everything. But until that, I think that about wraps it up. It's very pretty outside, and we haven't been getting much sun out here. So I'm going to enjoy that, try to get a little vitamin D, and working on a workout. Might even, hopefully Nick has a stream tonight. So, Jordan Baker says, how many ties do you have? Jordan, I got a lot of ties. I got maybe 40? I got about 40 ties. I'm a big tie guy. And I have a big family, so there's a lot of hand-me-down ties. A lot of hand-me-down ties. Don't attack me for owning a lot of things. I have a lot of hand-me-down ties, and I've always loved them. Because they complement all of my stuff, And a lot of them are similar colors. Like, I love bright yellows, grays, dark blues, browns. I got a few patriotic ties I switch out between. But I do always sport a tie. I love this jacket. Love this shirt. People just need to start dressing more normally again. None of this trashy stuff, I love a good wife beater tank top and a gold chain. But, when I mean trashy, it's like, just take care of yourself, hygiene-wise. I know I'm one to talk when my hair looks like this. Gosh, perfect time to be mentioning this. But, okay, I think that does it. I think that does it for the day. God bless you guys. Replay's going up. Let's plan on a guest on Friday. Not sure who I'm going to have. I got a few requests. I got 3 requests on Friday, but I'll pick, and whatever one I'm feeling like talking to about whatever, we'll have. Friday, the show might be later, which is tomorrow. Gosh, the week flies. But we're going to have a good time. God bless, guys. Modern Monarchist signing out. Just a cleric who loves to chant and say wants to go back. He's missing France. It really doesn't matter. Why are we... Balkans was something we never should have gotten involved in as well. Just because there's a war crime happening, just because there...